Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to high-level, high-octane, exciting chess events. I'm talking about the FTX Crypto Cup. Now, this is part of the Meltwater Champions Tour. If you've been following it all last year or this year, it's a series of online events. But this one is very unique because it's in Miami. All of the 8 players involved are staying at the same hotel, and they're playing live chess, but on computers. Now, they did this for the esports feel. Like, obviously, when you have a bunch of people playing League of Legends against each other, you can't do real-life League of Legends. But you can do real-life chess. But they decided to put it on a computer because that's kind of the chess becoming more esports. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. The format is very simple. There's 8 players, and every day, one person plays the other. They play a 4-game rapid match. If it's tied, they play blitz. And then every match, there's money at stake, $7,500 if you win in the rapid portion, and then they split some sort of thing if it goes to the blitz. Day number 1 was full of drama, was full of excitement, interesting games, and it had a very funny quote, which I will show you, in the matchup between Hans Niemann and Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So their first game began with a Catalan attempt, or a Fianchetto attempt to play like in the King's Indian style by Hans, and a relatively symmetrical structure early on. Things got really imbalanced quickly. Hans played knight h4, trying to get the bishop, and then played f4, kind of over the top of moving that knight, looking for f5. Hans had a very interesting position early on. He gave up a lot of the queen side, like literally, I mean, almost the entire queen side. He did this to sacrifice a pawn and get a lot of space. And it was a very balanced position, but look at this position. I mean, look at Duda's pieces. 6 of Duda's 7 pieces are still in the back rank. So Hans has plenty of compensation, and he's obviously trying to push the initiative forward as quickly as possible. But Duda, listen, you got to make ugly moves to defend sometimes, and that's exactly what Duda's doing, right? You see the pawn going to d6, right? He's going to give away a pawn here and try to get the rook in the corner, and he does exactly that. Now Hans has a rook for a bishop and 2 pawns. In the endgame here, these 2 pawns versus this one could be a thing. And really, there's kind of a question of, like, who wants queen trades, who doesn't want queen trades, right? Well, it looks like Hans does want a queen trade. And the players seem to have been shuffling their pieces back and forth a little bit around here. I mean, it was no real way to break through. You kind of see the pieces dancing back and forth. And then here something strange happens. Jan-Krzysztof Duda's laptop dies. Just dies, like in the middle of a time scramble. So that's crazy because the organizers had to have plugged in the laptop. Like, what are they doing? It's not the player's fault, right? Like, they're playing digitally. So the laptop disconnects, and now you just have time to walk around. And literally, the players were just walking around. And they, I mean, right? Like, they can just play, think about the moves and everything. So play finally resumes, and Hans, like Duda doesn't repeat, right? Like, Duda plays king f8. Like, I thought they're going to repeat moves. And then immediately, things start to go from bad to worse for Hans, who loses the b3 pawn, trying to get some counterplay, but Hans just couldn't recover at all. I mean, I kind of can't blame the guy. It's kind of a ridiculous situation. Like, you see the 2 pawns kind of coming down the board. Duda consolidates very nicely, and even this position is just winning for black. Even though Hans regained the exchange, the 2 pawns are simply too strong. And that's basically what happened, right? I mean, like, Duda just went forward with those pawns. We talked about this earlier. At some point, those queenside pawns would potentially prove to be decisive. Now, Duda won this game, and they interviewed Hans after. They're, like, interviewing all the players. And, just a friendly warning for parents. If you don't want your kid to learn the F word today, you should probably, cover their ears or whatever. I mean, they're going to learn it at some point, but, maybe not today. Anyway, this is what Hans had to say.
Describe it.
Well, it's completely fucking ridiculous that the laptop is just running out of power, and because the laptop runs out of power, of course he has all the time to think in the world to find all the best moves, and he has 20 seconds, and then he sits there for 5 minutes, gets to find all the best moves. So the fact that the laptop runs out of power completely threw me off, and it's just completely ridiculous. It should not be happening. Like, plug the fucking laptop in.
And then what's funny is that actually after Hans ended his interview, he was like, thank you. He was like, thank you. And then he just walked away. Yeah, listen, I'm with Hans on this one. I'm also not one of these guys that's like, chess is such a, like it's a professional game. Like, you can't curse. Like, what? Listen, my mom taught me when I was younger. Don't curse all the time. Don't curse in school. But there's a time and place to drop an F word. All right? Sometimes the F word makes things a lot more emphatic. And listen, I agree with the guy. Like, what are we doing? We're organizing. We got 8 dudes in the same room, but you force them to play on digital things. We got to plug in the laptop. And yeah, Hans goes down in this first game. I mean, it's tough. I'm sure it's very difficult to recover from such a thing. The second game between these two was absolutely nuts. I gotta quickly show you this game. It was a Sveshnikov Sicilian played by Hans, and Duda played a sideline. He didn't play knight d5 in this position, which is the main move. He took on f6 first, and this means that black doesn't have to expand on the queen side anymore. Black can play f5. Hans played a sideline here, bishop e6. The main move by far is bishop g7, and that allowed Duda to play this very interesting piece sacrifice on b5 and get this. And throughout this game, Duda just basically applied pressure and didn't let Hans move. He won back 3 of the pawns. So right now, Duda has 7 pawns versus 4, and he's just going to expand on the queen side. And I mean, Hans was fighting back, actually, very diligently. Like, he was getting counterplay, and he was trying to make it interesting. But look at this just amazing play by Duda, and this bishop is just not participating. Like, look at this. It's literally mummified. It has no squares at all. And okay, Stockfish showed some way, you know, for Hans to fight back, but it seemed like only a matter of time, because it seemed like Duda controlled all 3 sides of the board, just advancing on the queen side. And finally, a nice little tactic here, right? The rook on d8 has no defense, so it's very difficult to capture. And by the end of this game, Duda had won all of Hans's pawns, and I've never seen something like this. Duda, at the end of this game, as all the pawns begin falling here, 1 pawn falls, a second pawn is going to fall, and now a third pawn is going to fall. And while this position looks defendable, look at this. Just pause here. It's 7 pawns up for white. That's nuts. Have you ever seen something like that? 7 pawns for a rook. White is still up material. And it's also plus 50. And this nice little deflection tactic on the other side of the board. And yeah, just b7. It's a crazy game. Now, coupled with the fact that Hans was probably on mega full tilt after that first one, Hans ended up losing 3-0 in this opening match, and Duda does win his first match of FTX Crypto Cup Miami. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Hans is able to bounce back. I'm sure he will, but this one's tough. This one's tough, and it doesn't get any easier than in that first round, you know. That's what happened. There was another interesting matchup between Levon and Levon Liem. This was the only decisive game. They had 3 draws, and it began with an English. It was a Mikenas Karls English, very forcing line. So now we're going to get d5, e5, d4, takes, knight, takes, pawn, d4, e5, hitting back in the center, knight f3, knight c6, defending, attacks the queen, queen moves, attacking the knight moves. Going for the queen once again, the queen gets attacked, the queen moves, the bishop goes back because it was in danger, knight d7, bishop d3, bishop a3. Okay. All of this has been seen before. This is all theory. And it's equal. As you can see from the evaluation bar, it's just equal. Nobody's better. Actually, if anybody has a chance to be better, it's maybe even black. Rook b1 was played by Levon, preventing bishop b2. This was played in the US, in the tournament a couple of months ago between Ilya Nizhnik, strong player, nearly 2,700, I think, and Bach Ngo. Some of you might remember I played that guy. And they drew in like 7-8 moves, which was a huge result for Bach to draw this game against a very strong player. And yeah, and I mean, basically, Levon made this all about the f5 square. So he went to the f5 square, and he was like, if you take me, then I'm going to take. I have pressure here, and I'm attacking your queen. And your bishop is kind of an idiot. So queen goes back to a6, and now a very interesting move, rook b5. Defending the c4 pawn, right? Blocking the queen. The knight does end up getting to f5, and now queen f3. Now, visually, this position looks great for white. Looks like white has very good control. Looks like white has attacking chances. But just very simple c6, and then this. And I mean, black is in good shape. Black might at some point play the move e4 to, you know, mess the queen up, to go here, also go queen g6. This is one of the ways to play. But, yeah, Liem decides to get a little greedy here and grabs this a2 pawn. And then he grabs the c3 pawn as well. So this is interesting, but the problem is that white keeps the rooks together, and now the rook gets in. And yes, you have queen takes d5, but now there's knight takes h6. After gh and queen f6, if you count the pawns, black is still up a pawn, but this is a very dangerous position. This pawn's under attack, that pawn's under attack, that pawn and that pawn both have, the queen has eyes on them, right? So it's a tough situation. Levon can combine his attack with threats on the pawns, and here Liem had to not save his pawn. He had to defend against the incoming threats, and the threats began. Rook d7 now, right? The queen has to stay guarding this, so he tries to go here. But look at this beautiful deflection move. And if you play queen a2, which is what he does, then check out this move. There's rook e7 in this position. Levon didn't play that, but rook e7 is an amazing move. The point is that, again, you're trying to deflect the pieces now off the back rank, right? So rook e7, there is rook b8. And if you don't play that, like let's say you go rook f8, then I play bishop takes h6. And then after you take back on h6, this rook comes to g4. It's just amazing. Now, Levon does it in a slightly less exotic way. He plays rook b6, and he just goes for the h6 pawn, forcing a sacrifice, and just consolidates. Now that he's up a lot of material, he no longer needs to give mate. He could just go for the endgame. He's not even necessarily immediately winning right away, but he does have all the necessary tools here to win the game. Black just can't move. Black just has no moves here. Black is in Zugzwang. He goes here, h7, h8. He has no moves. No pawn can move. This pawn can go, but the rook will stop it. And yeah, a very nice win for Levon. Combined with 3 draws, he does win the match. He wins $7,500. The next match that I have for you was this unbelievable matchup between Pragg and Alireza Firouzja. This one had 3 decisive games. The first one was a Berlin symmetrical position played by the players, and this is one of the lines of many that looks just like a completely boring draw. You kind of see some, I don't know, some nonsense here. Bishop d6, bishop e7, bishop g5. Yeah, don't worry about this. We have a trade, knight e7 and knight c8. And this is the position that the players are going to play. Total symmetry in terms of pawn structure, but white has bishop for knight. White tries to expand on the queen side. There we go. We're hitting b7, kicking out the queen. We're still harassing the queen side. And Alireza transforms the pawn structure. But you see, Pragg just has way too much activity. And it seems as though Pragg really understood how to play these little intricacies of the position. Pragg very quickly picks the pawn up on c5, and he's just got an extra pawn. And that pawn's a passer, and he has a bishop. So he has long-distance escort of the pawn, right? D5, bishop on g2, defending d5. Firouzja's going to try his best here, but Pragg beautifully just booting around these pieces. The knight's got to go. The pawn on h5 falls, and the bishop is now coming in not to escort the pawn, but to murder the king. I mean, this is just bad news here, from bad to worse. Rook f8, king h1. Never too late to blunder a check that loses you the game. And the pawn gets to d7. The bishop continues to attack the knight. And it takes Pragg 44 moves, but coupled with the problems on the king and the pass pawn, black is just unable to defend everything, and Pragg wins a beautiful first game. Just a beautiful first game. From a very, very slightly better position, just dominant in the middle game. Wow. Amazing stuff. Now we're going to see potentially a bounce-back game. Firouzja begins, and we have a Rossolimo Sicilian. We have a capture, bc6, bishop g7. We saw Gukesh play b takes c6 against Fabiano Caruana in Chennai. Now we have d4. Alireza quickly bursts through the middle of the board. We have a trade and this position. Now, visually, this looks really nice for white. Really, really nice. Good center development. You know, you want to go e5. Well, that's why black's not going to really let you do what you want. So he gets the queens off. But now e5, bishop e3 attacks the pawn, rook d1. I mean, just look at this position. White just has a perfect setup. But black has the fact that it's the Sicilian, so your pressure is never really truly over. We have a trade in the middle, and these pawns are now stable, but bishop takes, and knight comes in to continue to attack this. This entire opening stage has been Pragg getting questions asked of his position by Alireza. a3, all right, h3. These pawns are going to come forward like this, but the knights are very strong. And the rook is going to keep asking questions, and now here comes b4, and these pawns are softening up. You can take on a3, but I'm going to get the c5 pawn, right? All right, you can take, but I'm going to get this. Now it's all about this pawn. Will Alireza be able to win the pawn? The pawn makes it all the way to c2, but now it's stopped. But is it stopped? Knight d4, rook c7, counterattack. Rook b3 here is apparently winning to go rook b1. Rook b3, rook b1. Pragg is better now, but he goes this way. And now this knight goes for the king. The pawn falls, and f6 is... Oh, man, this is bad news. Pragg had a moment there. But it's difficult, after 32 moves of suffering, to play a move that gets you the advantage with rook b3. Pragg misses it, and now he pays the price. He's going to lose a couple more pawns in the process, and yeah, Firouzja's just winning here. There's nothing you can do. You go somewhere there. I got knight f8. I'm going to win 3 pawns, and trust me, Firouzja's going to win a game up 3 pawns. I mean, he won a game up 1 pawn. You know what I mean? So Firouzja strikes back in a very imbalanced Sicilian defense. which means whoever wins this game, because they had a draw, is going to be the winner of this mini match. Now, we have a Philidor defense. What? That's so rare. I mean, the Philidor is not bad, but like of all the openings you can play at, after E4 at the highest level, the Philidor is one that you actually rarely see. These are the ideas in the Philidor. Black sort of stays flexible, maybe taking in the future, maybe going here in the future. But queen is always going to go to c7, and then we're going to figure it out, right? So there, queen's going to go to c7. You got your little setup here. But white is always slightly better here, just always. You can't take on a5 because f7 is always a target. But how is Alireza going to play this position? All right, there's a knight on e5. Trade, and now the knight goes to f5. Remember, we saw that knight on f5 in the Levon game as well. g6. Kicks out the knight, but preventing black from getting any further. Knight goes all the way back to g2. I think white's idea might be king h2 and f4, something along these lines. Wow. Wow, how did I know that? It's probably because I saw the game. Actually, to be honest with you, I did not see the game, but it seems very natural that you want to play f4 and kick the knight out, and this is, needs a guard, so very nice. Now, whether it's the best plan or not, I have no idea. The position is still very much in the balance. These guys were battling on equal terms the whole day. F5, smart, right? You gotta. Rook's there, the king is there. Time to open up the position. You can't take the rook because the queen was hanging. The thing about this blockading rook in the center here is that it's a little bit superficial. Like, you're very easy to kick out. There it is. Alireza's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm attacking your king. Pragg's like, uh-oh. I don't like that very much. Knight e5, all right. Now we have another knight versus bishop situation. We saw this in the first game between the players. And now Firouzja is better. All right, Firouzja has the advantage. And I mean, he's just done an excellent job. This pawn on a5 is absolutely going to fall unless you play b4. But now d5, striking back in the middle, and that's it. Alireza is in the driver's seat. White has way too many weaknesses to deal with, and it's bishop for knight. We've seen a bishop defeat a knight earlier today already. d4. Here we go. Queen c6 pins the rook. h5 stops anything from happening over there, as well as bishop h6, bishop e3 ideas. It's -4. Surely we are getting a resignation soon. A pawn has been won, but wait a minute. What happened to the advantage? What? Apparently, he had to not take this pawn. Apparently, bishop e5 and pressuring the king more was going to be winning because you have to hide the king and take with the rook. You shouldn't trade queens, and then it's -9. And the position just falls apart here for white. But instead of that, Firouzja traded the queens and allowed counterplay. And he's still doing okay, but wait a minute. Pragg is fine now. What is going on? Firouzja keeps trying to break through, but rook d3, and what just happened? Pragg is no longer down a pawn, he's up a pawn, and he's got the knight, and the knight's galloping up. Now we have a rook endgame. We have a rook endgame where only white is trying to play for a win. This is completely insane. Firouzja gets a pawn, but it's 2-on-1. Now there is a way to draw this, but they both got like 10 seconds on the clock. All right, it's a draw. Except here, instead of rook a1, you had to keep the king cut off. Alireza even could have played this move. And after rook h3, this is a drawn endgame because nobody can make any progress. For example, if you try to defend the pawn, I can do anything. I can just move my, here, give a check, something like this. We actually saw this in Hikaru versus Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, the game where Hikaru under-promoted to the wrong piece. Very similar endgame, I think. But instead of that, the king gets off, and that's it. Between this and the rook covering the checks, this is insane. What a turnaround. Pragg coming back from the depths of absolute defeat to win this game. Pragg wins. Pragg wins $7,500. That's unbelievable. Just what a comeback. Just what a comeback. Absurd. Completely nuts. And folks, of course, we saved the best for last. Magnesium Carlsen versus Anish Giri. This is a big matchup, obviously. Frenemies. The first game that they played was a draw. This is the second game. This is the second rapid game. And in this game, to surprise Anish Giri, Magnus in the Najdorf plays the 12th or 13th most popular move, rook g1. Yes, this is a move. This is a move. The point is to go g4. This is called the freak attack. All right? This is the freak attack. I don't know why. I guess if you play this, you're a freak. What can I say? You want to go g4? Black plays h5. It's one of the moves. Now Magnus puts the bishop on g5. And early on in this game, Magnus damaged the structure a little bit, played queen d4, long castled. And here Magnus was like, I wonder how I'm going to break through the black position. Well, let me just give him a full knight. Just give him a full knight. Full knight. There you go. Full piece. What? Yeah, well, that's why it's called a freak attack. You play the freak attack, you gotta play like a freak. Now, queen takes f6 is a free pawn in this position, because this is pinned, but there's no way to break through after that. And the thing about this position for white is you need to keep your options open. You're down a piece, all right? If black is able to consolidate, black's gonna have a piece up. He's gonna be totally winning, he's gonna win the game. So, g4, all right? And now f5, look at this. Another mummified bishop. I think f5 was actually the wrong move. I think Magnus had to go rook takes g4. He got a little bit too exotic. And even this position is very tough for black because the rooks are just laser beaming. The way he does it, he tried to not let black get any play, but after rook g8 and a rook trade, white loses a piece. White has lost one of the 4 remaining pieces that he has. And after bishop d5 and something like this, Anish just has a full extra bishop. He is completely winning. Now, he still has to win, which is difficult. All right, it's never over against Magnus. You got to play queen a5 here, hitting the rook. If queen h4 threatening mate, you got to give the king a walkout over here. Not easy. It's not easy to play like this when you're constantly being threatened with mate. Look at this rook b7 move, right? I mean, it's a tough position. Anish does it this way, and it still works. Still works. The king, starts running out to d7. But now Magnus has 2 pawns, and rook e6 is potentially coming. h4, h5, never forget the pawn can walk up. And Anish ends up forcing a draw here. I think queen f4 is already a step in the wrong direction. And the thing is, if you go king b1, there's rook b4. But already, there's really not much better you can do. Like, you can play rook e8, but then there's rook d1. And maybe there's this, but queen d5. And Anish decided rather than try to risk it for the biscuit, he was just going to make a repetition. Now, of course, that means that Magnus survives, right? And the more that Magnus survives, the more confidence he's going to gain. And in the next game, he plays a French, which he hasn't played much at all in his life. He's played a few Frenches in these online events, but classical almost never. We have an advanced variation. This is one of the lines of the advanced variation. And he's going to put pressure on the d4 pawn throughout this game. So he puts his knight on f5. Rook goes to c8, and this maneuver is intending to put the queen on a7. Very interesting maneuver here. It's exactly where the queen ends up hiding. And I think white had to be a little bit more aggressive here. I don't know all the theory, but I think you have to play g4 at some point in these positions. And then you gotta force black back, because if you don't, if you just sort of hang out, then you have black is going to get the bishop pair at some point. So he does, and he's going to play b4. And he does, and now he has a very powerful knight. And if you try to attack in the middle now, Magnus just very calmly is going to make a couple of exchanges and just be much better. Magnus has the bishop pair. He also has a potential long-term target on the d4 pawn. White has various attacking chances for sure, but how are you going to coordinate your pieces? Like, if you can't play knight h4, so if you go here, what's your next move? Like knight f6 check? I don't know. And that's very frustrating here to play with white, because black is just going to slowly improve his position. You see, he's just attacking on the queen side. You can defend your queen side. I'm going to continue to put pressure on the queen side. White is doing everything he can to set up an attack. Like, now he plays d5. Magnus is like, okay, and what if I take your rook? Well, now I'm going to fork you, bishop, and I'm going to fork your knight and your queen and bishop. All right, queen d3. All right, rook takes e1, knight f6. But just king h8. There's just nothing. There's just not enough firepower, right? You try to get aggressive here, but the position's not set up. Look at this. Queen d2, nice move. Zwischenzug. And then rook c1. And now we end in style here with queen e1 check. That's tough. Spelled T-U-F-F. With the 100%, emoji. Queen e1's a beautiful move. X-ray defense here. The rook guards the queen. If takes, then takes. It's mate in 2. Very nice. That's what happens when you don't put Magnus away in that first game. He's going to build up that confidence. He doesn't need any confidence. He's the greatest player of all time. But, you know what I mean? Like, if he was a little sleepy in game 2, now he's like, all right, I'm up 2-1. And in the last game of the day, Anish has to win with black. So what is Anish going to do? He's going to play a King's Indian. He's been doing this a lot. He did this in the Vidit match as well. But Magnus plays a Torre attack, which is kind of interesting. And provokes, g5 and all that, and then gives up his bishop, right? He's going to give up the bishop here, forcing this. But you'll notice that he's completely rotated his knights in a strange way. That knight went there, this knight goes back, but what's next, right? What's next? Well, if black plays passively, Magnus is going to start asking questions. a4. All right, you play a6, no problem. Bishop d3, queen e2, knight e3. Look how solid this position is for white. It's just a beautiful position. You know what the top engine move here is by black? King d8. Yeah, I'm not even joking. And then king c8, king b8, king a7. I'm not even joking. The top engine line here is this, king c8, knight c2, king b8, knight b4, a5, knight c2, king a7. This is the top engine line of the computer. The computer thinks black's king is safe on a7. Computer also might have smoked the ganja before this. I don't know. c5, though, is what he chooses, but Magnus is now like, well, here's d5 and here's f4. I have a lot more space in the middle. Both your bishops stand on the edges trying to laser beam the center, but it's just not working. Long castles, and Anish tries to fight back. Now, if AB, bishop b5, there's the rook coming in. Magnus is like, bro, we're not doing all that. Take. Let me just crack the center open real quick. Bishop going to g6, opening the door. There it is. And I'm not going to take back. I'm going to go f5. Now I'm guaranteed the opening of the f file. If takes, my knight comes in, and slowly your defenses are just going to be absolutely shredded here because your rook's never getting in. Bishop's never getting in, right? So b4, Anish tries to go on the queen side, and oh, look at that. The whole queen side collapses, but it's +8. It's +8. Every piece is involved, and this game is really, I mean, of course, Anish had to play for a win with black, which is why he took way more risk than necessary and played a little bit less accurately than he always does. But it's a really funny example of, like, I'll give you an analogy. I've been training, right? I've been doing some boxing, some Muay Thai training, and my sensei, my coach, 60-year-old guy, right? If you tried anything slick on that man, he would, boom, done, on the ground. All right? It's kind of the same with, it feels the same way with Magnus. You try anything out of the ordinary that's like even slightly dubious, he's like, hey, let's go, boom. It's not even close, all right? It's just not even close. Think of the scene when Harry tried to battle Snape. Just not even, it wasn't even close. Wasn't it just, you dare use my own spells against me, Potter? Anyway, our first day is over. So the people winning $7,500 for their matchups today: Levon Liem, young Krzysztof Duda, Pragg Ramesh Babu, and Magnus Carlsen. We've got 7 more rounds. No, we have 6 more rounds. Let me know if you want recaps of all of them, or if you want other videos in between. And I will, hopefully we get more interesting sound bites like we did from Hans today. I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.